All right, there we are.
Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. We have some special guests with us today. We have Sean and Daryl from Circle Y. Today they are going to be talking with us about saddle fit. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. If you just want to say hello to us in the comments. At the end of this segment, 2 lucky participants are going to win a special prize. So be sure to get those questions and comments in there. Let us know you're here. So with that, we are going to turn it over to Daryl and Sean, and you have the floor.
All right. Hey, how's everybody doing this afternoon? I hope you're doing well. First, I want to thank Valley Vet for allowing us to come in and just talk about saddle fit. We're going to talk about saddle fit really from lots of different perspectives, not necessarily about our saddles, but about any saddle. So if you have a question about fit and what's going on with your horse in general, please ask and we'll be glad to help. Sean has been, he works up in pretty much the whole northern part of the state. He lives in Minneapolis, and right now he's in Hutchinson, Minnesota area. That's where he lives. And I'm in Memphis, Tennessee at our corporate office. And this is kind of our training facility, testing facility here. We make prototype products and send them all over and test them out. And so I'm here in our shop where we do that. And I've actually been with Circle Y for a long time. I actually started with Tucker. Tucker Saddlery bought Circle Y about in 2002, I believe. So we bought them about 18 years ago. And I'm a saddle maker by trade. And so I built lots of saddles, probably, I don't know, a few thousand saddles. And I've been with Tucker since I was 14. That's a long time. So I've been with Tucker for 40 years. And we bought Circle Y. And then later on, we bought a company called Rangeman. And from that, we make lots of different saddles. We make saddles, kind of good, better, best type saddles. And because of that, we make saddle trees. And so the base of a saddle is called a tree. So this is what your saddle looks like before we put leather on it. And we're going to kind of talk about this and how it fits on a horse's back and just kind of go through some of the fitting and maybe some of the things that make it difficult to fit horses, or why from a saddle maker's perspective, why we can't do some of the things you would desire us to do. And so I'm going to jump into it. If you have questions along the way, kind of, I don't know, raise your hand. Melissa, is that how they do, or you can just jump in and kind of share some questions with us along the way?
We'll just interrupt you.
Okay, just stare at me. Good. It's almost like I'm home then when I talk to my kids. I appreciate it. Hey, but what I do want to talk to you about is just some perceptions about trees and fitting. And really what I hope to do, my goal is to try to take some pressure off of you when you go out and ride your horse. And so there's lots of thought that goes into it, lots of questions. There's a lot of different paradigms, perspectives on saddle fitting. And so I fit horses all over the country as well, and I travel around and do that. I do different events for our company. And so I can talk about saddle fit from any perspective just about, and almost could take hours if you wanted to. But what I'd like to do is just kind of hit the highlights and some of the things that you might be concerned about. But let's talk about our industry for a minute, okay? Our industry is at an all-time high, I guess, with the COVID going on. People are getting reconnected with their horses, which is a great thing. And when that happens, there's lots of questions that they have about fit, and they've learned things and heard some different ideas about fit. So we're getting lots of questions, and we get pictures, and we get all different ideas. People want to know our thoughts on saddle fit. Sean and I have even done some virtual saddle fittings where people have called us and had Facebook Live or something like that, go to meeting, and we're looking at their horse's back and they're trying on saddles. So saddle fit is a big deal to you, and I want you to know it's a big deal to us. And so in our company, most of our dealers, including Valley Vet, only carries about 2 different sizes of trees. We call it a medium or a wide, or a regular fit or wide fit. And so it's kind of generic, and I'll kind of explain that in a little bit. But you need to know that we actually make about 14 different tree widths within our industry, or within our company. And we make saddles to fit mules, 2 different tree widths. We make saddles to fit thin-bodied horses, a couple different tree widths. We make saddles to fit wide-bodied horses, a couple of different tree widths in it. And we make saddles to fit horses that have a little more dip and all different things in it. And so we have about 14 different tree widths. And you need to know that if a saddle doesn't fit your horse, it doesn't mean it's a bad company. It just means the saddle doesn't fit your horse. And we understand that our saddle doesn't fit everybody's horse. And we're not necessarily good with that, but we understand that. And so, and you need to know that in our industry, nobody out there designs a tree to hurt your horse's back. Every company that's out there wants their saddle to fit your horse's back. And so what we hope to do, what Sean and I hope to do, is just kind of help you with some of those thoughts, some of those ideas, some of the concerns, some of the things you need to walk through when doing it. The first thing I want to talk about is gullet width. Okay, gullet width. Gullet width is the measurement on the front of the saddle from these 2 points, this point here and this point here. And you take a measuring tape, the gullet width on this particular saddle is 7 inches. Now, here's an important thing that you need to know. I've built lots of saddles. I cannot measure gullet width when a saddle is built. It's very difficult to measure with all the leather, the swell, the seat jockeys, the skirt. It's very difficult to measure the actual gullet width when a saddle is built. And saddle fitting, a half an inch is like a mile because of all the geometries that come with it. And so it's very difficult to measure gullet width. But when you measure gullet width, you measure from this point to this point. And typical medium tree, or what we call semi-quarter horse, would be about 6.5 inches from here to here. A quarter horse bar is about 7 inches from here to here. And extra wide or full quarter horse tree is about 7.5 inches from here to here. And there's different ideas about that and stuff. We can get into all that. But just in general, that's the 3 different tree widths. But here's another thing you need to know. In our industry, and I hate to tell you this because you'll be mad at us, there's no standard. There's no standard in our industry when it comes to saddle width. Nobody has ever come in and say, in order for a saddle to be a semi-quarter horse tree, it has to be 6.5 inches from here to here. It has to be 12 inches from here to here. It has to have a 90-degree angle. There's no standard in our industry for that. In our industry, they have tree makers like they have saddle makers. And so we're saddle makers. So we build lots of saddles. And tree makers come to us and they want us to buy their tree. And they explain to us what they do to make the tree fit the horse better. And so we kind of listen and we do some of it. Well, we built so many saddles that we were buying trees from several different tree companies. And because they have little different variations in how much rock, which is this part of the bar, or how much spread, which is this angle part right here, they had, there was little variations that you could buy a saddle from us and it fits your horse really well, and buy the same saddle 3 years later and then not fit your horse well because we bought the tree from a different company. Well, we got the message. You guys don't like that. So we went on this long journey and I was a part of it. We went out and we fit all these horses. We got all this geometry for the horse. We went out and we actually started our own tree company. We have CNC machines and all this computer stuff so we can make trees. So we can make sure that the trees are very accurate when you get it. So all of our saddles, if you buy a saddle today and you like it, you could buy that same saddle a year, 5 years from now, and it will fit your horse the same. But because of that, the geometry there's no standard in our industry. The burden of fit is really on you, on the consumer. So we can give you some idea on what saddle will work in anybody's saddle. And Valley Vet can give you an idea on what saddle would work on anybody's saddle. But really the burden of fit is on the consumer. It's on you because we don't know how tight you tighten your cinch. We don't know exactly where you place the saddle. We don't know how much padding you use when you put the saddle on. There's so many variations that can help or not help the saddle fit that it's very difficult for us to say this is the saddle you need to go with, but we can kind of get you started. And so because there's no standard, there's about 3 ways that people do gullet width. One way is they change the width of the bar. They leave the angle the same. The typical angle on a bar is about 90 degrees. And so some companies, they leave the angle the same in a 6.5 inch gullet at a 90-degree angle, a semi-quarter horse, a 7-inch gullet at 90-degree angle is a quarter horse bar. 7.5 inch gullet, 90-degree angle is a full quarter horse bar. They don't change the angle. They just change the gullet width. And some companies, they leave the gullet width the same. Can you believe that? They leave the gullet width the same, but they change the angle. So if the gullet width is 7 inches, that's 90-degree angle semi-quarter horse, 95-degree angle is quarter horse, and 100-degree angle is full quarter horse, but the gullet width never changes. The gullet width never changes. Then the third way, we do both. Man, that just blows people's mind. You do both. You do both. And so, so really, which one is right? Well, whichever one fits your horse. The reason we do some of those is because some of those methods causes your horse to fit better. Well, what would cause it to fit better? Well, if your horse has a decent wither and the horse gets big in the shoulders gradually, then not changing the angle, but changing the angle works better. If you have a horse that's really mutton withered and no wither at all, and they're like sitting on a barrel or on a table, then having a wider width with a wider angle fits that horse better. So the tree geometry would depend on the horse's conformation. We have this saying in our company, we don't fit breeds, we fit conformation. Because many of you guys have quarter horses. Some are thoroughbred, some are very stocky, some are very thick, some are very round, some are very narrowed, all these different things. And so we actually look at conformation. We fit conformation. So the first thing I want you to know is that there's no standard in our industry. The burden of fit is on you. And I apologize about that, but I just want you to know that so when you go out and do fitting. The second thing you need to know is that there's no cost in geometry. Let me say that again. There's no cost in geometry. My friend Chris actually shared this with me, and he works with me. He's in the other room, and he's in there designing and building bridles and stuff like that. And so what that means is that this geometry, the way this fits your horse's back, you can have a $1,000 saddle or a $20,000 saddle. If your horse is very narrow in the back, it doesn't matter which tree you have. If it could be a wide tree on a $20,000 saddle, and it wouldn't fit your horse any better. Now the materials would be better, and who built it might do a better job, and the quality and the tooling and the expense of the tree, which is this piece, all those could be better, but the geometry, there's no cost. I was in Brighton, Colorado at a saddle fitting or at a tent sale several years ago, Brighton Feed, legends of our company, and somebody wanted a Tucker saddle, and I wanted them to have a Tucker saddle. I really wanted them to have it. And they brought their horse up, and we tried on all different Tucker saddles, and our Tucker saddle didn't fit because the geometry didn't match up with the horse's back. And so we actually tried on a synthetic saddle made by another company, and as soon as I put it on the horse's back, man, it fit like gold. And you could tell that geometry worked just fine. So a $500 geometry saddle fit the horse better than a $2,000 geometry horse. So there's no cost in geometry. Just because a saddle costs a lot doesn't mean it fits your horse any better. It all has to do with the geometry. So there's no standard in our industry for saddle fitting or for tree sizing. Sorry about that. And also there's no cost in geometry. And so what is some of the things you need to look for then? Well, one of the things that you need to look for is how does it fit in the shoulders? How does it fit in the shoulders? Now, let me say this. Saddles are made to fit normal. Let me say that one more time. Saddles are made to fit normal. A normal semi-quarter horse tree saddle, if I can use that generically, normally fits a horse that's kind of thoroughbred, high-withered, kind of narrow-chested, narrow-bodied. If you have a horse that's kind of like that, almost anybody's tree that's semi-quarter horse should work if your horse is normal. What we call a regular, or what we call a wide tree or a quarter horse bar is for a typical quarter horse conformation, average rear end, all these different things. And so when you get outside of normal, typically that's where you have problems. Let me say that again. When you get outside of normal, typically that's what you have problems. So for example, Sean is sitting over there in Minnesota and I'm here in Tennessee. Both of us wear a large shirt. And so now a large shirt could be a little loose on me in the stomach area, a little tight in the shoulders, but it fits. It fits. For Sean, it could be a little tight in the stomach. Sorry, Sean. And a little loose in the shoulders, but a large fits. A large fit. Saddles are very similar. If you have a normal thoroughbred horse, it might be a little loose in the shoulder. It might fit a little better here and there, but for the most part, it fits. Now, here's why. Here's why that will work. Saddles, this is the bar. This is what you're trying to do when you fit horses. You're trying to make contact with your horse's back. On a typical saddle, you're trying to disperse about 2 pounds per inch. So that means if you make 100% contact on your horse's back, the tree itself will hold about 240 pounds, give or take, depending on the length of the seat. About 240 pounds, that's at 100% contact. Where the lighter weight you are, the less weight you are distributing. So if you're 100 pounds, then you don't have to have 100% contact, because this can hold 240 pounds if there's 100% contact. So the lighter weight you are, or the less riding you do, the less necessity you have to have for making contact throughout the whole bar. So 100% contact is not always necessary. Now, if you're a heavy rider, or you're riding 8 hours at a time, several times a week, or even several times a month, then more contact is necessary because you're trying to disperse weight across the horse's back. Now, because the saddle is made to fit normal, then the big question is what is outside of normal? What is outside of normal? That's a great question. Somebody probably already asked that, hadn't they, Melanie? Already asked that question. What's outside of normal? Well, let me give you some examples of outside of normal. Outside of normal would be sway back. And you see this in older horses. You see this in young horses. You also see this in really short coupled horses. You see the back drops a little bit. And so sway back, this is kind of an example of a bar. This is kind of the rock. All saddle trees have some kind of bend in the bar to fit the conformation of the horse's back. Well, if a horse is sway back, you need a lot of bend in this bar. Nobody makes a bar that has this much bend. So that's outside of normal. Young horses, older horses, or short coupled horses sometimes have a lot more bend in the back than others. Horses that are higher in the front but lower in the back, it will cause the tree to kind of dig into the rear end when you sit into it and cause some soaring problems around the loin. That's outside of normal. Horses that are higher in the back but lower in the front, it causes the opposite direction, cause it to hurt in that area. Here's one, asymmetry. Now we have CNC machines. We use a wood and dowel system in order to make our trees fit better. And so we use that we make sure our trees are accurate. But if your horse is bigger on the left side than it is on the right side, then you're going to have that saddle could tip to one direction a lot, or it could roll a little bit, or you could get some soaring on one side or the other. That would be outside of normal. Or a horse that has a high backbone would be outside of normal, because the back of this right here could put pressure on that backbone. Some horses soar in that area because you have a high backbone and this part hits it. So outside of normal. Here's another that's outside of normal. Whenever I do this with a bunch of people, I ask this question and they start shooting out answers. Another outside of normal is you try to overthink it. The consumer tries to overthink it. And you've heard about dry spots. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You've heard about saddle fitting. You've heard about pads. You've heard all these different ideas, and you don't enjoy your horse anymore because you're afraid you're going to sore your horse's back. Let me help you with a statement. When you have a saddle that doesn't fit, most often it's very obvious. If you have to look for a problem, most of the time there's not a problem there. Let me say that one more time. When a saddle doesn't fit, most often it's very obvious. If you have to look for a problem, more than likely there's not a problem there. And so when I go out and I do saddle fittings, most of the time when they back their horse off the trailer, I know which one of my saddles are going to work. I never put the saddle on that works first. Because when I do, you say, well, what else do you have? It can't be that easy. And so I always put on a saddle that doesn't fit. And because when it doesn't fit, it's very obvious. And then I might put on that's the other extreme. So you could see what it looks like the other way as well. And then the third saddle, or maybe the fourth saddle, I'll put on the saddle that I originally should have put on first. Because I want you to see what a good fit looks like, because it's very obvious to see when a saddle doesn't fit good. And so usually I was in Sacramento, California about 3 weeks ago at the Sharon Camarillo Classic. I did 12 saddle fittings. Every one of them, the saddle fit fine, but the consumer was overthinking it, or they were over padding, or they weren't doing the cinch correctly, or they had the saddle too far forward. They had all these things. So the saddle fit fine. It was my saddle. It was Treeless saddles. It was Echo-brand saddle. There were saddles from all over the place that were there. It wasn't just my saddle. Everybody, all the saddles fit fine. And I said, really what the problem is, one lady had a Treeless saddle, and the saddle kept rolling. She had 1.5 inches of padding on her horse's back. Think about your shirt and how well it fits. Try putting 1.5 inch sweater on underneath you and see how well it fits. So I unearthed the saddle. I said, pull on this saddle horn. And she pulled on the horn, and the saddle rode really bad. And I took off the 1.25 inch padding she had on, and she had on like a 1/2 inch padding underneath it. I said, now pull on it. She couldn't hardly move it. I said, ma'am, you don't have a fit problem. You have a pad problem. You have a pad problem. She said, well, somebody told me I need to really pad for these type of saddles. No, and not to mention she only weighed about 120 pounds. So she didn't need that much padding. So we were able to work that out. She left very happy. Sometimes we overthink it, and we don't enjoy our horse because we think we're soring them. But saddle fitting is not difficult. All you're trying to do is make this touch your horse's back. For the most part, you don't even really care if the skirt touches. The skirt is the big part of the saddle. For the most part, you don't really care if the skirt touches. You only care if this bar touches, because this is the core part of it. And so let's talk about some things that you might need to look at in order to see if your saddle doesn't fit, okay? One of the things that people look for is called dry spots. Any guys ever heard of dry spots? That was one of the things that you heard about? I get the question all the time. I've got dry spots. I get the question with people who've had our saddles for 5, 10, 15 years sometimes. You know, they get dry spots. They all of a sudden think that our saddle is not fitting the horse. Julie Goodnight, who's one of our endorsees, told me that every year your horse changes shape. Not necessarily conformation, but your horse changes shape. And I can identify with that. I got out of the shower last night, and I've changed shape. You know, I can remember what I looked like when I was 20 years old. I'm 53 right now. I've changed shape probably several times. I actually looked at my wife. I said, Elise, I said, I noticed something tonight. She said, what's that? I said, I'm not nearly as good looking as I thought I was. And she told me I was. And she's a good wife, but I can tell you I'm not nearly as good looking as I think I am, okay? But your horse changes shape all the time, right? And so as a result of that, it is true that your saddle could not fit your horse over a period of time. But most just change conformation. And so sometimes you've done something different. Now, this might hurt some of your feelings, and I'm not looking at you on the screen, so I can say this. Some of you may have put on a few pounds, and that could change the way the saddle fit. Some of you could be riding more.
Uh-oh.
We lost him.
Well, Sean, you're up.
You know,
back on you.
to kind of go off of what Daryl was talking about, I had one like that this year. We had a lady who has put on a little bit of weight, and we had a fitter with a different pad, and we had to put her in a bigger seat size to get her saddle to fit. But we'll wait for Daryl to come back on. I'll kind of talk a little bit about one thing that people don't look at is we have so many different shapes and sizes of saddle trees. Oh, there's Daryl.
Sorry about that, man. I was on a roll. Hey, let's take some questions. Anybody have any questions? Now I've lost everybody.
Get him back. There we are. We do have some questions.
Okay, let's take a couple questions and then I'll move on.
Lori said, I have a hard to fit, wide-shouldered, short-backed quarter horse. What tree would you recommend?
What kind of riding are you doing, Lori? Okay, let me just address that in general, okay?
Okay.
Okay, typically if you have a wide back, short coupled horses, you have a couple of concerns. One is obviously the tree width, right? The other one is the skirt length, Sometimes the skirt can be too long and the skirt could cause your saddle to bridge, which means you make contact in the front. Lori said she's trail riding. Okay, Lori. So are you riding, Lori? Are you riding a foxtrotter or what type of horse are you riding? Arab? This would be good. And so, so as a result of that, so you're concerned about tree width, which is this part right here, mostly, and you're concerned about skirt length. Okay. Now here's the deal with skirt length, team. The saddle bar on a Western saddle, minimally can be 22.5 inches. So this bar right here, the minimum length it can be is 22.5 inches. As a result of that,
whoa. Okay.
they got banners flying over saying, "Go Daryl, go Daryl." Yeah.
Lori said she's riding a quarter horse.
Riding a quarter horse. Okay, yeah, I see that. And so, so the minimum length this can be is 22.5 inches. Where it makes contact is right about here. Right about here is where it first makes contact, and then right about here. So directly underneath the swell. This is the swell. This is the front of the saddle. This is the cantle. This back part right here is called the cantle, and then the bars. And we can talk about the bars. But your typical contact points is right here, directly underneath the cantle, which is this piece, and then directly underneath the swell, which is here. And that distance there is around 20 inches, 18 to 20 inches, okay? Now here's the deal with skirt length. The longer you make the seat, which is this piece here, the longer the bar has to be, okay? So the longer the seat, the longer the bar has to be. So this is for a 17-inch seat, 16.5-inch seat. If I want to make this an 18.5, this bar has to become 1 inch to 1.5 inches longer, because all I'm doing is moving this piece backwards. And so I'm moving this backwards in order to make the skirt longer. So when you have a short-backed horse, that makes the bar longer. It also makes the skirt, which goes around it, longer. And as a result of that, you can have your saddle bridge if you have a short-backed horse. So Lori is concerned about two things. She's concerned about skirt length, and she's also concerned about width. Now, if you have a short-backed, very wide horse, the question would be, does your horse get big really fast? So if they're really round in their back, that means they get big really fast. So you need a wider gullet width and wider angle. So I would suggest at least trying in like an extra wide tree. Don't get that confused. People, try to, but what you really look for in the extra wide, you have wider gullet, wider angle. Let me say that again, wider gullet, wider angle. If your horse gets big fast, then you need that. Now, we fit a lot of draft horses. Sean and I do. We have lots of police departments who use our saddles. Draft horses almost always use what width tree, Sean?
Wide.
Wide. You would think they use extra wide. But the reason they use wide trees because they have lots of wither. Percherons have high withers. When we do saddle fitting, Lori, get this. You're only fitting the first 8 inches of the horse's back from the wither or the backbone area. Where do you get that? Well, look at how far this bar sits. This bar only sits down about 8 inches. We don't care when it comes to saddle fitting. I care because I care about the health of your horse. But we don't care if the horse's stomach is dragging the ground when it comes to saddle fit, because we're not fitting the stomach, we're fitting the back. And so we're only concerned about the first 8 inches. So some of you guys have big-bodied horses, and you think you need a big tree, but really what you're looking at is that backbone and about 8 inches down. And if your horse has got good conformation, good definition, then you might not need as wide of tree as you think. You can actually use a narrower tree. Now, here's another thing with skirt length. And again, I'm not looking at you, so I can say this. I love every one of you guys, okay? But this is what we find happens. Usually, people who are heavier than normal buy small horses. Sean, why do they buy small horses?
Easier to get on.
Easier to get on. Yes. And so they need to get their foot in the stirrup. And so, but really, the larger you are, the bigger horse you need to have in order for the horse to hold and disperse the weight properly on a saddle tree. So if you're a big person, you have to get like a 17 and a half, 18-inch tree. This bar here is really long, and you need a horse that has a back that's long enough in order to hold that, or else you're going to have some fitting problems. On shorter horses, the back of it, especially if you're a little heavy, you like to ride it hard on the cantle, this could dig in to the back of it, and which is not good because the horse's hip is coming up. So you need a horse's back that's long enough in order to hold that. One way you could tell about your tree is the front of this is where we screw in the concho. We have to have enough room left in the tree in order to screw in the concho. So the bar starts here, and the back end, this is where we screw in the concho. So we have to have enough room back here in order to do that. So typically your bar starts where the front concho is and where the back concho is. And so you're concerned about that. So Lori, that's a long answer, but here's the deal. Will be determine how fast every month withered, then you need to go wider. But if it gets big gradually, then you could probably go with a wide tree. Then the length of the skirt will be determined really about how much back length that your horse is able to take. Good thing is you could get round skirted saddles and short skirted saddles, and they're made by lots of different companies. I can help you out. Okay.
A lot of our tuckers actually will run about 24 inches on a lot of our tucker models. And there's also an in-between model out there that's actually called the foundation wide, where actually we'll just gradually just have a flare in the shoulder and kind of be in between a wide and an extra wide. So there's some different options like that, and you can work with your Value Vet customer service rep, and they can get a hold of us, and we can look at pictures of your horse and kind of help you with that also.
Okay, that's good, Sean. So hey, so kind of going back a little bit. Do y'all want to ask any more questions? Do you want me to continue?
There's quite a few questions on here. So Susan says, she says, aging horses and prominent withers, what can we do?
Aging horses and prominent wither. That's a great question. In our industry, saddle pad technology has almost come as far as saddle technology. Back when I first started making saddles, if you didn't have a rawhide covered tree, your saddle wasn't any good. Now, the consumer, you're more open to technology that's out there. So we make saddles that are out of carbon fiber. We make trees out of Kevlar. We make trees like the Flex tree. This is the Flex tree with a combination of high and low poly density bars. We make trees out of all different things to kind of help disperse the weight and give movement to the horse's back. So we're very concerned about saddle fit, just like you are. Well, the saddle pad industry has done the same thing. Not just our company, Rangeman is a pad company, but we make pads to help with you with that. So if you have a horse that's aging and you love the horse, you want to continue to ride them, but you're getting some bridging problem. Bridging is when it makes contact in the front and in the back and not in the rear. We make a sway back pad. Sean, don't you have a sway back pad you can kind of show them?
Yep.
Kind of show them what a sway back pad does.
So our sway back pad, and Value Vet has these, the sway back pads will actually go, they start to shim out. So in the middle, and they allow enough when it's sitting on the horse, this will give a spine relief to the horse, and also it'll put in a shim that'll go from smaller to bigger in the middle, and then it's back to smaller again, and give it where it'll fill in that middle area.
Yeah, so that's called a sway back pad, and that saddle is designed for you who have younger or older horses that are losing their back or hasn't gained the muscle in their back yet, to kind of fill in the hollow area in order to make contact with the horse's back. Now, here's the thing about padding. The better your saddle fits, the less padding that is necessary. Let me say that again. The better your saddle fits, the less padding is necessary. So when we fit horses without a pad, and we can see how good the saddle fits. Like, I ride Tennessee Walkers. I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I love to trail ride. And so, and I have a certain conformation that I really like. My saddles fit really well. I used about no more than a 1/2 inch pad. And so if your saddle fits really well and you don't have any issues, you just need a normal pad. You need about $100 pad. Typically a good pad's $100 on up. Okay. You don't have to go out and buy a pad to fix a problem when you don't have a problem. And so I use a 1/2 inch pad that costs really about $80, and it fits my horses really well. But there are pads out there to help fix problems. Sean, you have another pad called an M2 Lite. Kind of explain that and what it does.
So the M2 Lite pad has a couple of great features to it. One, it's got a really good bar support on it. Two, again, it's got a spine relief built into it. These come both the fleece or the tacky bottom. Our tacky bottom will help it stick in place really well. They're easy to clean. And another thing in it, this pad is a moisture wicking pad. So this pad, you talk about dry spots. With this pad, you're going to have dry spots. My wife rides in her horse. She rides in this pad with her Flex 2. He's got a prominent spine that helps with it. She can ride all day long, and at the end of the day, she will actually have a 2-inch dry spot all the way down the center because there's nothing touching the horse's back.
Yeah, so really what I want you to get is what Sean is talking about, is that there's pads out there that can fix a lot of problems. And if the core of your saddle fits, making minor adjustments, there's pads out there in order to do that. So you don't have to go buy a saddle to fit a horse if you don't have the money. There's pads out there that can probably fix it. But please, let me caution you, don't overpad. Only pad where it's necessary. You can overpad and ruin your whole fit, cause the saddle to row, cause it to slide. And for most people, they overpad is probably their biggest problem when they have a saddle that fits. So don't overpad. If your horse is normal and you have a normal tree, then you're golden. You're ready to go. Hey, let me say this real quick. And again, I love you. But if you have tried 20 saddles and none of them work, you're overthinking it, or you have a bad horse. There's not 20 bad companies out there. There's not 20 bad saddles out there. If you've tried that many, then you're overthinking it, and you're trying to look for something that's probably not there. Now, one of the things that you may be doing, and this is a common mistake, is you have a saddle and it might fit and you go ride and there's dry spots. That's the biggest question we get is dry spots. Let me help you with that for just a moment. And this might be the best part of the discussion that we're having here. Dry spots is caused by a lot of pressure in one area over an extended period of time. Let me say that again. Dry spots is caused by a lot of pressure in one area over an extended period of time. You will not get dry spots at a 20-minute workout going around in an arena and be a problem. It would be hours. How long, Daryl? Really depends on your horse. I've seen some saddles that fit a horse horribly, and the horse has absolutely no sign of how that works or that the saddle's not fitting. And it's just like us. Some of us have a higher pain tolerance than others. Some of us, our skin, is not as, might sore a little quicker than others. We get cut a little easier. Horses aren't any different, okay? But it's over a period of time. A short ride doesn't show a saddle fitting problem. Then what is it? I've got dry spots. Most often there's two things. One is it's damage caused by a previous saddle. When you have dry spots, the dry spots, as a result of saddle fitting issues, it kills the sweat glands, and the horse most often never sweats there again. This is what will happen. The first thing you'll notice is the horse is discolored a little bit, and we call it white hairs. Then right after the white hairs, the horse gets dry. Over a period of seasons, most often the hair will come back to its natural color, but almost always he never sweats there again. And so if you have had dry spots, you need to ask yourself this question: have I had dry spots there before? If the answer is yes, you could have a saddle that fits really well, but you have dry spots from previous damage. It doesn't mean you have to put your horse down. Doesn't mean you have a bad horse. It means your horse has a scar now. Now you have to look for other things. You have to look for swelling, swirly hair. He tries to nip at you when you get on. You're going to have to become a student of your horse in order to see if there's another sign there, but dry spot sign is gone. That's no longer there. Now, the other thing that could cause dry spots is a good saddle fit. But what do you mean by that? Well, have you ever spilt something on your carpet and you need to get it up? Melissa, when you spill something on your carpet and you have to get it up, what do you normally do in order to get the moisture up?
Usually soak it up with a towel.
Yeah, you soak it up. In Tennessee, we call it a rag. We go get a rag and we put it on it and we put pressure on it. And Melanie, when I put pressure on it, what does it do? It soaks up the moisture, right? Well, believe it or not, saddle pads, the technology today are made to do the same job. Sometimes there's dry spots there because the pressure of the saddle against the horse's back is causing that pad to soak up the moisture that's there. And when you pull your saddle off, wow, you have a dry spot, not because the saddle doesn't fit, because it's putting good pressure in that area. And the pad is designed, most saddle pads today are designed in order to soak up the moisture, especially if it's felt or if it's like the tacky material that has the felt inside of it. Most pads are made to draw the moisture up and wick it away. And sometimes dry spots is a direct result of the pad doing its job. So I need to ask you something, team. Do you want the pad to do the job or do you want dry spots? So sometimes the dry spots is caused by that. So you can't always look for that deal. But most often when we have saddle fitting problems, people see first the dry spots that come with that. So let me say that again. If you have dry spots, you need to ask yourself two questions. Has the horse ever sweat there before? Or secondly, feel the bottom of your pad. Is my pad doing the job? I was with Sean up in northern Minnesota. This lady came in. She had a barrel horse, and she was trying to find. She tried how many saddles, Sean?
You talking about the one that was talking to her horse?
Yes.
Okay, 25, 30 saddles.
25, 30 saddles. I knew then that she was going to be hard to fit. And I went in, I got my saddles. Believe it or not, none of my saddles fit. And so there's another brand saddle, and I kind of know this brand pretty well. And I thought, you know what? I bet this saddle would work. I came out, put the saddle on the horse's back. It was like it was made for it. So we had an arena out there. So she got in the arena and she rode for about 20 minutes. I left her alone, went in and worked with other people. We were at a saddle sale. I came back. She said, man, you guys, you hit it here. This saddle fits great. She said, now let me check and see the dry spots. She pulled it off. Horse had dry spots in the wither. And she said, no, doesn't fit. And I thought, I know what happened. The saddle fits really well and the pad did its job. It soaked up the moisture in that area. But I knew after 20 or 25 saddles, all I was a salesman to her. I had no authority with her, and she knew what was best. And so I said, yeah, I guess you're right, ma'am. But if I were you, this is the type of saddle I would look for when I go shopping for saddles. And she said, yeah, I appreciate it. So she left. When she left, I actually took the pad that she used because it was our pad. I flipped it upside down, and I felt where the wither area of contact was, and the pad was completely wet, more so in that area than the rest of the pad, which told me that the pad actually did its job. It soaked up the moisture where the saddle was making contact. So, but this is the area, team. Listen, this is the area that needs to fit the best. If you can fit this area in the horse's shoulders, fitting the rest of the saddle is gravy. It's very simple. Horses carry 60% of their weight on their front two legs, not to mention the pull of the rigging. So this area, if you can fit this area, you're in good shape. You're in good shape. Let me encourage you, don't make this hard. Don't make this hard. So we've got about 15 minutes. I want to make sure I answer as many questions as possible. Melanie, give me a hard question.
Beth said, if you have that many tree sizes and are trying to fit a hard to fit horse, how can you do that if you don't have a tack store close?
Okay, the best way to do that, and you know, again, this is important to us, but people send us measurements of the horse's back all the time. And you can actually go to tuckersaddles.com. There's a little area that talks about measuring your horse's back. You could send that in to us. We will actually take that and we'll put it underneath trees. We have computer generated things. We can look at it. We can get very close to tell you which saddle you can at least start with. Okay, you can at least start with. And honestly, I told somebody, were they from Canada, Sean, that we couldn't fit their horse because it was so wide. We're having trouble with another horse now.
We're working on a tree for that.
Yeah, we're actually developing a tree for these really big horses, and I have another one where this horse is too narrow. But to answer your question, you can actually send us patterns. We can give you suggestions, and you can go back to Valley Vet, or we will work with Valley Vet in order to make sure you get the right saddle. Valley Vet's got a very generous return policy. You could try it out. If it doesn't work, you could send it back. We could swap it out. But we want to make sure you get the right product. It does you no good, and it does us no good for you to get a product that doesn't work. And so we will not steer you wrong, because all you're going to do is think bad about our company. But there are ways you can go on there, measure your horse's back, and send that to us, and we will go and help you. And also, Circle Y has salesmen that travel the country. And many, many times we send our salesmen to go see consumers in order to help you. Now, I know I just opened up Pandora's box. We can't always do that, okay? But if able, we will try to come to you and help. But we also have dealers all over the country. I've gone to Valley Vet and done saddle fittings and had people come in from all that area to do. You could go to events that we're doing, and we'll be more than happy to help you. Not with our saddle only, but with any saddle you have. We want to make sure that you have the proper fit for your horse's back and make sure that you're able to enjoy the ride that you're on. Great question.
The other thing, too, Daryl, just one more thing on that. The other place to do stuff that we've done before is Valley Vet has an email, saddles@valleyvet.com. And there's another place to send pictures of your horse and stuff like that. And they'll share those with us and work with us. But if you do a saddles@valleyvet.com was another good source for that.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's awesome.
Nancy asked, what difference does the tree material make? I've seen rubber, wood, rawhide, and steel.
Yeah. Okay. That's a great question, Nancy. Hey, let me say this. Regardless of any concept that people use on their trees, the core of the saddle has to fit. If the core of the saddle doesn't fit, none of the concepts work. Okay. So even a treeless saddle is not really treeless. A treeless saddle is barless. That means it doesn't have this piece right here, but it does have this. This is actually the front of a treeless saddle right here. So this is still made out of wood. This still has to fit your horse's back. And we make this in different tree widths. So we make this where it's wider in here or else narrower. So regardless of the concept, this tree has to fit. Now, what the material does, it helps with horse movement. It helps with flexibility. It helps with loosening up the shoulders. For example, this is a flex saddle. When we fit flex saddles the exact same way we fit wood tree saddles. We try to put it on the horse's back and make sure it's making contact all the way through it. And once it does, what the flex saddle does, it has movement. See this movement? Has movement in the front and the back, and it really frees up the shoulder movement. A lot of our barrel horse people like this saddle. When you turn the barrel real tight, the front actually moves a little bit and frees up the shoulders in order to go around the barrel. Gaited horse people like this because gaited horse people, the horses move diagonal and it moves with the horse's movement. But regardless of the material, it doesn't change the fit. It only changes some of the attributes after the saddle fits. So you have to make sure the core of the saddle fits. And then from there, you can get the attributes of the rubber tree or the flex tree or any type of trees that are out there. Even the treeless saddle has to fit, or else the concept doesn't work. Great question. Somebody else.
Jamie says, I have a quarter horse that every saddle I've tried to include different tree sizes and skirt length has rolled up on to its neck. I would love a great consult.
Okay. This is a common problem, the saddles that roll up on the neck. So usually that's a result of two different things, okay? One is the horse doesn't, and I don't know about her horse, but she could send us pictures we'll help or do a virtual deal. We're doing lots of virtual things.
We just got pictures from her already emailed to us. Julie just forwarded them to us.
Oh, good. Well, we'll take a look at it, but let me talk to you about the couple ways. Sometimes a horse doesn't have a lot of shoulder muscle. And so the scapula and the shoulder blade are the same height, or sometimes the scapula area is bigger, kind of convex like the back of a spoon. And as a result of that, it will cause the saddle to slide forward, or the horse could be a little higher in the back than they are in the front. It will cause the saddle to slide forward. And you can have a good fit. It could all fit really well. Now, some people might be offended by this, but sometimes the fit is a tail crooper. What is a tail crooper? It's a backwards breast collar. It's a backwards breast collar. All a tail crooper does is keep the saddle from sliding forward. A breast collar keeps the saddle from sliding back. So sometimes you can have a good saddle fit, and all you need is some type of tail croup in order to keep it there. But typically, saddles slide forward. Now, you could be over padding as well, but saddles slide forward if the horse is a little lower in the front, or the scapula and the shoulder blade are about the same width, and there's nothing there to really keep it in place. Saddle bars, this convex area has to sit down right behind the shoulder blade, which is really the scapula area right behind there. This needs to sit in there. And if that area doesn't have a good pocket for you to sit in, sometimes your saddle will have a tendency to slide around a little bit. Great questions. We have about 8 minutes.
Daryl, with that, talking about that, what about if she's got a saddle with a different rigging position? Could that affect it moving forward? If you got if you have like a 3-year rigging on it, you're rigging it way far forward, but your horse is a really far forward shoulder, so you need to rig.
Yeah. That's a good point. Your rigging position could change how that saddle fits as well. So if you have a too far forward rigging and your horse's legs a little bit in front of the shoulders a little bit, that rigging could cause that saddle to sit in a bad area. So when sometimes saddle fits really well, but the conformation of the horse, these little nuances, just little things can cause that saddle to slide or move or not fit in the right area all the time. So that's a great point, Sean. I'm glad you're here. Somebody else.
One more question here. Shirley asks, are flex trees good if you have several horses?
Yeah, okay. So let me talk about that. First, let me say that flex is generic in our industry. Okay. It's like Reynolds Wrap, right? Reynolds Wrap is a brand, but we call that for aluminum foil, right? It's all Reynolds Wrap. Well, flex is generic in our industry. There's good ones and there's bad ones that are out there. Okay. And so if you have lots of horses, flexes are good for that because it gives you the variety or the ability to change with different horse movement, especially if there's asymmetry. But here's the downside with that. It doesn't flex to extremes. And so you still have to have a saddle that fits. Now, if I have lots of horses, what I'm buying is I'm either buying a saddle for the horse that's the largest. If I'm riding them all equally, I'm buying a saddle for the horse that's the largest because I can always pad a little bit, right? Or I'm buying a saddle for the horse I ride the most. If I have a horse that's 80% of my riding, and the other horses are 10 to 20% amongst them, I'm not really concerned about fit with them as much as I am about the horse I'm riding the most. But if you're riding them all equally, then you need to buy for the largest horse and pad up. Flex trees are very good for fitting horses because there's some grace in there when it comes to fitting. But there are some good flex saddles out there, and there's some ones that aren't as good, and you need to kind of watch out for that. But that's a great question. All these are great questions, man. You have a very intelligent group of people.
With Daryl talking about that with the flex saddles, you know, for instance, I have one horse here on my farm that has one shoulder that's bigger than the other. And with the flex saddles, I'm able to put a normal pad. I mean, actually, she rides in the M2 Light, and I'm actually able to use that flex too, and I was able to adjust the rigging back. And she does both mounted archery. She's on the volunteer search and rescue unit, and she can go for long rides. And that flex really helps with that factor of that horse.
Thanks, Sean. That's good insight.
Okay.
Yeah, Sean's wife is a tremendous horseman. The fact that she can hold both hands up and do that mounted archery and not fall off or keep the horse going the right direction, to me, is awesome. I sit back, relax, let my horse do all the work. So she's much better than I am. Yeah, that's awesome.
The other thing, Daryl, one thing we didn't cover on pads, you know, we talk about saddle fittings or thing. Another thing that needs to be thought about with pads is, remember, this is your shoe when you think with a horse. It's the thing that's always touching the horse's back. So this is a wear item. So if this is starting to get dirty and you try cleaning it, or it's starting to get worn underneath of it, this can cause dry spots because it won't allow the moisture to soak up anymore. It can cause soaring, because I've seen a lot of pads when I've done fittings at barrel races and things like that, where they come up to you and they'll, well, how old's your pad? It's 8 years old. Well, how often you ride? I ride about 6 horses a day. The pad's about ready to fall apart. It doesn't matter what brand it is, that their wool pad's as hard as a rock. It's not going to do them any good anymore. They need a new pad before we can look at a new saddle. Yeah,
so let's talk about probably the number one pad that is out there that people really want or appreciate is wool pads. And the quality of wool is a big deal. Now, felt pads, felting is a process. You can have a 100% felt pad and have no wool content, okay? Felting is a process. They either use steam press it in order to felt it, or they use what they call a needle press. They have all these needles and they push it together and they get that together. And so usually the more expensive pad, this is sad, but it's true. The more expensive the pad is, the more wool content is in there. And if it's a $25 felt pad, there's no wool content in it. Okay, it's polyester, it's cloth, it's whatever, cotton, whatever it is. And so if a pad is almost always $150 or more, there's a very large wool content. The closer it gets up to $200 and beyond, there's a very high wool content. Sometimes, like we have pads in the $200 range, and they're 100% wool. But the felting is a process. So don't get confused when you say, I've got a felt pad and it costs $50, that's a great deal. Well, you do have a great deal on a felt pad, but you don't have a wool pad most often. So felting is a process. And if you want a good wool pad, almost always the more expensive the pad is, the better quality of wool that's being used. Make sense?
We did have a question on cleaning recommendations for saddles, tack, and maybe saddle pads too.
Yeah, so there's lots of products that are out there. Almost any oil is good. The downside is leather is like a sponge. And so this is a piece of leather here, and it's like a sponge. And just like a sponge, if you get it too wet and you press on it, Melanie, what happens when you press on it?
Liquid's gonna come out.
Yeah, the water comes out, right? You can oversaturate your leather. It's got pores in it. And if you put too much oil on it, the oil will come out. It's called crocking. Your dye will come out and get on your pants, and then you're mad at us, okay? And so depending on how much you ride your saddle or where it's sitting or the climate would determine how much oil you would use. We use everything from a Neat's Foot style oil, depending on the color we're trying to get, all the way to Doc Tucker, which is a product that we have that doesn't, it helps with mold and it doesn't oversaturate your leather, and it keeps it very soft. It keeps it very clean. But any type of good saddle oil that's out there, you want to clean your leather on a regular basis, then once you do that, once you get the moisture on it, you have to put the oil back into it. So any type of Doc Tucker, Leather Therapy, Neat's Foot oil, Lex oil, Hydrophane, any of those type of oils that will put oil back into your leather you want to use. How often? Typically once a season. If you're riding the saddle a lot, once a season would almost get it, unless you get it really wet and you're out in the weather and the saddle gets dry, then you want to put some oil on it in order to keep it going. That's a great question.
Okay. Did you have anything else to add about saddles or pads before we draw some winners?
Well, we've got 1 minute. I could talk another hour, but you don't want me to do that because people want to win something. Hey, let me say this, guys. I've worked with Valley Vet for years, and they're a great company. They're an honorable company. And if you need your product needs met, you call these guys. If they can't answer it, they actually call me, and I help them get through it. And if you have some saddle needs, I promise you we'll help you get your answers. You might not like the answer, but we'll at least get you an answer and get you going in the right direction. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you for the invite.
If you guys have any more questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. Maybe we can twist Daryl's arm into coming on and answering some of these for us. Thank you so much.
Are we going to draw?
We're going to draw. We're going to draw.
Can I watch? I want to watch.
Yes, you sure can. All right.
All right.
All right.
First, we're going to give away the M2 light pad.
All right.
One of our
signatures. And the winner is Dawn Stoller. Woo!
Dawn, woo! Way to go, Dawn.
Dawn, congratulations.
Hey, Dawn, you win a black saddle pad, and we want you to know you can get any color you want, just as long as it's black, okay?
All right. Second, we are going to give away a wool felt pad to one lucky participant.
All right.
And the winner of that is Jamie Mooney.
Jamie Mooney, way to go, Jamie.
Congratulations,
Congratulations, Jamie.
All right, that's not it though. We've had such a great response today. We actually have 2 bits to give away, but we're not going to give those away until tomorrow. So here's what we need you to do. We need you to keep commenting, ask questions,
Tag friends.
tag your friends,
Share this out there for everybody.
share the video because it's a great video and lots of people need to see it. So
We'll be drawing those winners tomorrow.
tomorrow we will draw winners for 2 different bits.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you.
Daryl,
Thank you
Mary.
very much. You guys joining us. Thank you very much. And
Hey, be good.
we want to let you know that on Monday we will start our August giveaway, Fly Into Style giveaway. So make sure you sign up for our emails, check us out on social, and be ready for that.
So join us tomorrow and then join us again on Monday.
Thank you guys very
you.
much.
Be good.
Later.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks, Daryl.
Bye.